Anyone who's ever been the arranged fiancé in a billionaire family knows the drill. Those guys who act all poor, brooding, and cold are the best at faking devotion. They play the tragic first love act so well that everyone buys it, even making me defend them while they're beating me half to death. In my past life, I was kicked until my bones shattered by the kind and gentle Julian Miller. But a second before I lost consciousness, I was reborn at the worst possible moment, watching him swing a baseball bat to break my sister-in-law Olivia's arm. Last time, I froze to death in the snow while begging for her sister's mercy. This time, I woke up and immediately scrapped the marriage contract, reunited with my billionaire father, and put Olivia in power. I'm taking my inheritance back because I finally realized these scumbags belong on my feet, begging for their lives. In my previous life, my fiancé's first love, Julian Miller, played the part of a spoiled rich kid, running scams and swindling everyone. When I finally exposed who he really was, he lost it. He was so humiliated and enraged that he hired a group of thugs to beat me within an inch of my life. As I lay dying on the cold ground, my fiancé's sister begged him through tears to help me. But he just stood there, watching with cold indifference. "There's no way," he said. "Julian is such a sweet guy. He'd never pay someone to hurt you on purpose. Don't think that just because we're engaged, you're actually somebody. Know your place, Lucas." In her attempt to save me, my fiancé's sister crossed Julian Miller. He retaliated by having his hired thugs run her over with a car, killing her instantly. Even as I breathed my last breath in the ER, my fiancé was still busy making excuses for his precious first love. Having been given a second chance, I wasn't about to sit around like an idiot waiting for a fiancé who didn't care. I called my father immediately. "Dad, there's a guy out here impersonating me and causing a mess. You need to send security to deal with it right now. And one more thing," I added, my voice cold. "I'm changing the arranged marriage with the Lynn family. It's not going to be Chloe Lynn anymore. Switch it to her sister, Olivia." All those years, I'd poured millions and endless resources into the Lynn family, only to end up nursing a viper in my bosom. I wanted to see exactly how long Chloe Lynn and her little first love could keep up their act without my backing. Suddenly, I was slammed down. Several thugs forced me onto my knees, which cracked against the frozen concrete. A white-hot flash of pain surged through my entire body. Before I could even gasp, a heavy palm swung across my face. My cheek burned like it was on fire. I forced my head up, and there he was, Julian Miller, looking down at me with that same smug, arrogant sneer I remembered from my death. "You pathetic loser. Did you really think you could embarrass me in public?" Julian spat. "Feeling pretty smug now, aren't you, Lucas?" He reached down, grabbed a fistful of my hair, and jerked my head back, forcing me off the ground. He forced me to look him right in the eye. Well, I didn't give him the satisfaction of a response. He snarled and slapped me 3 more times. I felt the skin split, and the metallic taste of blood filled my mouth. It was real. I'd actually been reborn. But of all the moments to come back to, it had to be this one, the night of the beating. Julian saw the state I was in and let out a sharp, mocking laugh. He turned to his hired muscle and barked an order. "Keep going. Beat him until he can't move. I want him to remember exactly what happens when you cross Julian Miller." In my previous life, I'd spent this beating screaming insults and cursing him. That had only made Julian crazier, and he'd ordered them to finish me off right then and there. I wasn't going to make the same mistake twice. I planned to stay quiet, take the hits, and wait for my opening to escape. But I underestimated his cruelty. Silence didn't pacify him. He had no intention of letting me walk away. The thugs got more aggressive, their boots and fists raining down on me without mercy. It felt like my skeleton was being dismantled piece by piece. A white-hot, agonizing pain consumed every inch of my body. Just as the world started to go dark and I felt myself slipping into unconsciousness, Julian finally signaled for them to stop. He stood over me, a twisted, sadistic grin playing on his lips. "That's a little lesson for you, Lucas. Cross me again, and I'll make sure you don't wake up at all. You'll die in a way that makes this look like a massage." With that, he turned on his heel and walked away with his crew. I was left alone, a broken heap on the frozen ground, gasping for air that felt like needles in my lungs. Shaking violently, I forced my shattered fingers into my pocket to find my phone. My hand was definitely broken, and I couldn't grip the damn thing. My thumb slipped, and I accidentally hit the speed dial for my fiancée. "Chloe, what the hell do you want now?" Her voice barked through the speaker. "Didn't I tell you to stop calling me unless it was an emergency? You have no idea how much of a nuisance you are." Chloe sounded completely disgusted that I was even breathing. "Chloe, please." I managed to wheeze out, but she cut me off before I could finish. "I've told you 1,000 times, Julian is the sweetest guy. He would never hire thugs to touch you. Stop lying. Stop trying to poison my mind against him. It's pathetic. I'm done listening to your crap. Lucas, I don't believe a word you say." The line went dead. She didn't even give me a second to tell her I was bleeding out in the snow. In my last life, I'd spent months trying to convince her, begging her to see Julian for the monster he was. She never believed me. She just thought I was being a jealous, dramatic brat who couldn't handle not being the center of attention. Well, I wasn't going to play that game again. After she hung up, I gritted my teeth against the agony and used my good arm to push myself up. It took everything I had to navigate to my father's contact. "Dad," I sobbed as soon as he picked up. "It hurts. Everything hurts. Please come get me." The sheer terror and pain I'd been holding and finally broke, and I started crying uncontrollably. I had been so stupid. I'd run away from home because I hated the idea of an arranged billionaire marriage. I wanted true love, and I thought I'd found it with Chloe Lynn back when her family was struggling. My father was heartbroken, but he couldn't stop his stubborn son. I wanted to surprise Chloe, to show her I loved her for who she was, so I never told her I was the heir to the Miller empire. I never could have guessed that my little romantic surprise would be the very thing that got me killed. On the other end of the line, hearing my broken sobs, my father's voice began to tremble with pure panic. "Lucas, hang on, son. Don't you dare close your eyes. I'm coming for you right now." For the first time since I woke up in this nightmare, the crushing weight in my chest lifted just a little. My GPS was on. I knew he'd find me. In my previous life, I'd been beaten unconscious before I could even reach for my phone, left to die in the dark without a soul knowing where I was. Back then, I just waited for the end in a haze of agony. But as I lay there now, the light reflecting off the snow caught a movement. Julian Miller was walking back toward me, his expression dark and twisted with rage. "You still have the energy to call Chloe?" he spat, looming over me again. "I guess my boys are being too soft on you." My stomach dropped. I realized then that my father might not make it in time. I glared at Julian, using every ounce of strength left in my lungs to scream. "I'm the real Miller heir, you idiot. I just call my father. If I die here, he will burn your entire world to the ground." I was trying to bluff him to use the Miller name to make him back off. But Julian just let out a sharp, mocking bark of laughter, his eyes full of contempt. "Oh, I'm shaking in my boots," he mocked. "I'm the Miller heir, Lucas." Even the old man himself acknowledged me. "Who are you to question who I am? Just because you share a last name doesn't mean you're the one holding the keys to the kingdom." His words hit me like a physical blow. My mind started racing, trying to make sense of the nonsense he was spewing. Was Julian some secret love child my father had on the side? No, that was impossible. My father had struggled with fertility for years. It took multiple rounds of IVF just to conceive me. He wouldn't have another son. He treated me like his entire world. There was no way he had another heir hidden away. My head was spinning, theories clashing in my mind like a storm. I needed answers, but right now, I just needed to survive. Survival had to come first. Swallowing my pride and masking the agony, I lowered my gaze and made my voice as submissive as possible. "You just want Chloe, right? I'll give her to you. I'll break the engagement tonight. Just let me walk away." Julian's response was a loud, hysterical laugh that echoed through the empty street. "Let you go? In your dreams. Chloe is mine, period. And even if I beat you to death right here in the snow, nobody is going to do a damn thing about it. Chloe told me everything, Lucas. You're just some pathetic orphan with no family and no future. The lie I'd told Chloe to test her love had come back to haunt me. It was the very reason Julian felt so safe killing me. I closed my eyes, waiting for the final fatal blow. But then, through the silence of the night, I heard the roar of a powerful engine. It was growing louder by the second. A black sedan shrieked around the corner, fishtailing across the ice before slamming to a halt right in front of us. The door flew open, and Olivia Lynn scrambled out, her face pale with terror. She threw herself over me, her voice shaking as she sobbed my name. "Lucas! Oh God, Lucas, I found you. Don't worry, I'm getting you out of here." I clung to her coat, like it was the only thing keeping me on this earth. In my last life, I'd watched from the afterlife as Olivia knelt in the rain outside Chloe's house for 24 hours, begging for news of where I'd gone. She was the only one who had truly cared. Chloe hadn't moved a muscle, her heart as cold as ice. And in the end, Julian had Olivia murdered too, paying a driver to run her down in broad daylight. Seeing her here now, I was overwhelmed with a mix of crushing guilt and pure gratitude. I couldn't stop the tears. She tried to pull me up, but Julian was faster. He snatched a baseball bat from the grass and swung it with everything he had right at her arm. I heard a sickening crack. The sound of her bone snapping was so loud it made my skin crawl. Olivia gasped, the color draining from her face as she collapsed beside me. "Olivia!" I screamed, my heart shattering. Julian just laughed, that sick, twisted sound again. He pointed at her and looked at his thugs. "Pin her down. Don't let her move." The thugs swarmed her, pinning her to the frozen asphalt. Julian walked toward me slowly, his shadow stretching over me like a shroud. His eyes were wide with a terrifying, manic energy. "How sweet," he mocked. "But honestly, it's just pathetic." I gritted my teeth against the pain, glaring up at him. "Julian, she's Chloe's sister. If you hurt her, Chloe will destroy you." He erupted into laughter again. "Retaliate? She'll probably send me a thank you note for getting rid of her competition. Didn't you know? They're half-sisters. Chloe's been looking for an excuse to kick Olivia out of the family for years." I looked at Olivia, horrified. She was white as a sheet, but she gritted her teeth and looked me in the eye. Don't worry about me, Lucas. Just get to the car." It felt like a knife was twisting in my heart. My vision went blurry with tears. Both my arms were useless, and my leg felt like lead. I couldn't move. Julian reached down, grabbed my hair again, and yanked me up until I was face to face with him. "I'm going to end this now," he hissed. "In your next life, try to be a little smarter about who you pick a fight with." He picked up a heavy, jagged rock from the side of the road. The look in his eyes was pure, unadulterated murder. Just then, the screech of multiple tires tore through the night air. 4 black SUVs slammed on their brakes, surrounding us in seconds. The doors flew open, and a dozen men in black tactical gear swarmed the area. Before Julian's thugs could even react, they were staring down the barrels of the Miller family's elite security team. Julian didn't even have time to scream before a guard stepped in and dropped him with a single blow to the head. He went down hard and was dragged away like a piece of trash. A man stepped out of the lead vehicle. I knew that silhouette anywhere. He ran toward me, his composure completely shattered. He scooped me up in his arms, his entire body trembling as he sobbed. "I'm here, Lucas. Dad's here. I'm so sorry, son. I'm so sorry." Seeing his face, the last bit of adrenaline left my body. Everything went black as I finally let go. The first thing I noticed when I woke up was the overwhelming smell of bleach and antiseptic. It made my stomach turn. I was lying in a sterile hospital room, hooked up to a dozen machines. My father was right there, sitting in a chair by my bedside. He was clutching my hand so hard it hurt. His eyes were bloodshot and puffy. "Dad," I managed to whisper. "Lucas." "Oh, thank God." He leaned over and pulled me into a careful hug, his voice thick with emotion. "You terrified me, son. I'm never letting you out of my sight again. Never." I leaned into him, soaking in the comfort I'd missed so much. In my last life, my death had destroyed him. His hair had turned white in a week, and he'd withered away until he died of a broken heart. I wasn't going to let that happen this time. I had a second chance, and I was going to use it. "Dad," I said, my voice gaining strength. The engagement with Chloe Lynn. I want it canceled. I'm done with her. I looked him straight in the eye. He looked surprised, even a bit confused. But Lucas, you were obsessed with Chloe. You literally threatened to jump off a building if I didn't agree to the match. What changed? Thinking back on how pathetic I'd been made me want to crawl under the bed in shame. I was an idiot, Dad. I see her for what she is now. She's not the person I thought she was. She never was. I took a breath and said it clearly. I want the engagement moved to her sister, Olivia. My father looked at me like I'd just started speaking a foreign language. But he couldn't say no to me. He never could. I told you she was trouble from the start, Lucas. If you want Olivia instead, then Olivia it is. I'll handle the paperwork. He sighed, a look of weary relief crossing his face. Suddenly, his phone buzzed. He stepped away to take the call, and as he listened, I watched his expression turn from concern to cold fury. I have to get to the office for an emergency meeting, he said, tucking his phone away. I'll be back tonight. I've sent some of our house staff over to watch you while I'm gone. Just rest, okay? He gave my hand one last squeeze before rushing out. It only occurred to me after he left that I hadn't asked him the big question. Was Julian Miller actually his son? I reached for my phone on the nightstand, but the screen was black. It had died during the chaos. I figured I'd just wait for the staff to arrive and have them charge it for me. But then, the door to my room was kicked open. I looked up and my blood ran cold. It was Julian Miller, and he was dragging a very angry-looking Chloe Lynn behind him. The second Chloe saw me, she was screaming. She marched right up to my bed and shoved a finger in my face. You pathetic, jealous snake. How dare you try to set Julian up like that? I looked over at Julian. He had a tiny Band-Aid on his forehead and was acting like he'd survived a war. I was the one in a full-body cast with a dozen broken bones. The sheer audacity of it was unbelievable. How are you even here? I rasped, looking at Julian. My father's men had you. Julian just lifted his chin, that same punchable smirk back on his face. I'm the Miller heir, you idiot. Nobody tells me what to do, he sneered. I couldn't believe he was still keeping up the charade. I glanced over at the corner of the room. One of my father's house staff was standing there in his uniform. You, I called out. Get these two out of my room right now. The man nodded and started walking toward us. But he didn't go for Julian or Chloe. He walked straight up to my bed. Before I could even ask what he was doing, he wound up and slapped me across the face so hard my head hit the pillow. Shut your mouth, the servant barked. How dare you speak to the Miller heir like that? My cheek was throbbing, and I just stared at him, my brain failing to process what was happening. I looked over at Julian, who was wearing a look of pure triumph. A cold, sinking feeling hit the pit of my stomach. Chloe stepped forward, looking down at me like I was something she'd stepped in on the sidewalk. You're a real piece of work, Lucas, Chloe said. I knew you were jealous, but hiring actors to kidnap him? That's low even for you. Do you have any idea how much the Millers love their son? The Millers are going to make you pay for this, she added. I was still reeling from the slap, but I managed a dry, bitter laugh. You actually believe him? I asked, looking at Chloe. If he's the big billionaire heir, why is he living in a dump and scamming people for pocket change? Chloe didn't even blink. Julian said he took his mother's name to stay humble. And besides, his parents are private people. It's none of your business. It finally clicked. Julian wasn't a secret son. He was just a con artist who had managed to convince everyone, including my own house staff, that he was me. I turned to the servant, my voice shaking with rage. You moron. Look at me. I'm the one who grew up in that house. I'm Lucas Miller. The servant looked at me, then looked back at Julian. Nice try, kid, the servant said. I've worked for the Millers for 8 years. I know what Master Lucas looks like, and it's definitely not you. I wanted to scream. I'd stayed away from my family for 8 years just to prove myself to Chloe. I'd been gone so long that the newer staff didn't even know my face. I had effectively erased myself. Now, when it actually mattered, I couldn't even prove my own identity. Chloe pulled a few $100s out her purse and tossed them onto my bed like I was a beggar. Look, Lucas, we had some fun, but let's be real. I'm marrying into the Miller family now. You were a nice distraction, but a guy like you is just someone to pass the time with, not someone you actually marry. Julian pulled on her arm, acting like a spoiled brat. That's it? You're just going to let him go? My dad is going to be furious when he hears how he treated me. He was putting on a great show of being the victim, but his eyes were cold and calculating. Chloe stepped forward and grabbed me by the front of my hospital gown, right over my broken ribs. She hauled me off the bed and started dragging me toward the en-suite bathroom. Every movement was agony. My vision swam as the pain threatened to overwhelm me. My head slammed into the porcelain sink with a sickening thud. The world spun, and for a second, I thought I was going to black out. But Chloe wasn't done. She grabbed my hair and started slamming my head against the tiled wall over and over. The servant stepped in too, pinning my broken arms so I couldn't even try to protect myself. I was completely helpless, a literal punching bag for their twisted entertainment. Chloe looked at me, a fake expression of pity on her face. "It really is a shame, Lucas," she whispered. "If you actually were the Miller heir, I'd be worshipping the ground you walk on. But you're not." I was sobbing, my breath coming in ragged, painful gasps. I'm a Miller heir. Why won't you just listen to me?" She laughed, a cold, harsh sound. "The Miller heir? You spent the last year wearing thrift store clothes and eating ramen. Look at Julian. Everything he wears costs more than your life. Who's in here?" The voice boomed from the hospital room, sharp and authoritative. It was my father. Chloe and Julian froze instantly, their faces turning pale. They scrambled out of the bathroom, trying to look composed. I was left slumped on the cold tile floor, every breath a battle against the waves of agony crashing over me. I tried to scream for my father, but the servant was still there. He slammed his hand over my mouth, cutting off my air. "That's Master Lucas out there," he hissed in my ear. "You make one sound upset him, and I'll finish you off right here. Do you understand?" I could only produce muffled, desperate whimpers. But inside, I was burning with a white-hot rage. The humiliation was almost worse than the physical pain. I heard my father's footsteps in the other room. "Chloe," he asked, his voice full of suspicion. "What are you doing back here?" Julian took one look at my father and nearly jumped out of his skin. He slunk back, trying to use Chloe as a human shield. Chloe, ever the actress, didn't miss a beat. "Oh, Uncle Miller, I just brought Julian by to visit a friend of ours who's in the hospital. Nothing to worry about." She was still trying to play the part of the perfect future daughter-in-law. My father didn't seem to be listening. He was scanning the room, his brow furrowed. "Where's Lucas?" he asked, his voice tight. He looked around one last time, looking frustrated. "I have to get back to this meeting. Tell him I'll be back." He turned toward the door. I thrashed against the servant's grip, desperate to make any kind of noise. But the man was massive, and he kept me pinned to the floor with ease. In a final, desperate act, I clamped my teeth down on the servant's finger as hard as I possibly could. He let out a sharp, jagged yell of pain. My father stopped in his tracks. He spun around, looking directly at the closed bathroom door. "What was that?" Chloe jumped in front of him, blocking his path. "Oh, it's nothing, Uncle. Just my driver. He's having some stomach issues." She gave a forced, awkward laugh. "Julian can check on him. You really should get to your meeting. Don't let us keep you." My father stared at her for a long, silent moment. He looked at the bathroom door, then back at Chloe. For a second, I thought he was going to walk away. I heard his footsteps start to move toward the exit. A wave of cold, dead despair washed over me. This was it. I was going to die on a bathroom floor while my father walked away. The servant's face twisted in rage. He backhanded me across the face again. "You little rat. You think you're so smart? I'm going to make you regret ever being born." My head slammed back against the tile. I felt something warm and wet trickling down my forehead. My vision turned red, and my ears started ringing. I was fading fast. Chloe and Julian strolled into the bathroom, looking like they were enjoying a show. Julian put on a fake expression of horror, covering his mouth with his hand. He turned to Chloe, his eyes full of crocodile tears. "Chloe, look at him. He's trying to make me look like the bad guy. He's doing this on purpose just to hurt my reputation with my father. First he tells everyone I'm a fraud, and now he's throwing himself around just so your uncle thinks I'm a monster. It's not fair. I've been so patient, Chloe. I even had my guys offer him a ride home, and he tells everyone I attacked him. I can't live like this. You have to do something." Every single word out of his mouth was a blatant lie. And the most insane part was that Chloe was nodding along, buying every second of it. Chloe's face hardened. She looked down at me with pure, unadulterated hatred. Fine, she snapped. If he wants to play the victim, let's give him a real reason to complain. He can pay you back with his legs. She walked out of the room and came back a few seconds later. My heart stopped. She was holding a serrated paring knife she'd grabbed from the fruit basket in the ward. I tried to scramble away, but my legs wouldn't work. Chloe, stop. You're going to go to prison for this. Put the knife down. She let out a jagged, hysterical laugh. I'm already losing my mind, Lucas. Without the Miller fortune, my family is nothing. I'll do whatever it takes to keep it. It's your own fault, Lucas. You should have just stayed in your lane instead of trying to ruin Julian. She raised the knife, the blade glinting as she aimed it right at my Achilles tendon. She brought the knife down. But just as the blade was about to pierce my skin, the bathroom door was nearly taken off its hinges. The force of the door hitting Chloe sent her flying across the room. The knife clattered onto the tile. "What the hell are you doing to my son?" my father roared. His voice was shaking with a combination of pure terror and absolute fury. He was across the room in a heartbeat, pulling me into his arms and checking the blood on my face with trembling hands. When he saw the gash on my head and the bruises covering my body, his face went from pale to a terrifying, dark mask of rage. "You monsters," he spat. "I must have been insane to ever think my son should be anywhere near you." Chloe was slowly pushing herself off the floor, looking dazed. She was clutching her chest, her eyes wide with shock. Uncle Miller, please let me explain." "Explain what?" My father screamed. "You were about to stab him. You've been torturing my son in his own hospital bed." Chloe started to stammer, her confidence completely gone. But Julian is your son. How could it be him? Lucas is just an orphan. He's nobody." Hearing that, my father actually laughed, but it was the scariest sound I'd ever heard. He spat on the floor in Julian's direction. "The only orphan here is going to be you. Lucas is my son. He is the sole heir to everything I own. He is my entire world. And you two pieces of trash thought you could just discard him? I will destroy you. I will make sure you never see the light of day again." Julian finally seemed to realize that the game was over. He tried to bolt for the door, but my father's security team was already there. They slammed him against the wall and pinned his arms behind his back. He started screaming and crying, begging for mercy. "It wasn't me. I didn't do anything. It was all Chloe. She's the one who wanted to hurt him." Julian shrieked. Chloe looked at him, her face a mask of pure betrayal. "Julian, what are you doing?" she screamed. Tell him you're his son. Tell him he's making a mistake." She was still delusional, unable to accept that she'd been conned by a small-time crook. The servant who had been holding me down was the first to snap out of it. He dropped to his knees and started sobbing. "Sir, please, I didn't know. He told me he was your son. He told me to handle the intruder. He had all the IDs. He knew everything about the house. I thought he was Master Lucas. I would never have touched him if I'd known." My father didn't even acknowledge him. He just kept holding me, his eyes wet with tears. "It's okay, Lucas. I've got you. You're safe now." If Olivia hadn't called me and told me what was really going on, I would have walked right out of this hospital and left you with these monsters. I almost lost you again. I looked toward the door and saw Olivia. She was sitting in a wheelchair, her arm in a fresh cast, and her face as pale as a ghost. "I'm so sorry, Lucas," she whispered, her voice cracking. I should have been faster. I just shook my head slightly, giving her the best smile I could manage through the pain. I looked at my father. "Dad, get them out of here. I never want to see their faces again." My father nodded, his expression turning cold. He looked at Chloe and Julian, and for a second, I actually felt sorry for them. "Don't you worry, son," he said, his voice dropping to a terrifying whisper. "I have the perfect place for people like them. They'll spend the rest of their lives wishing they'd never met you." Julian's legs gave out. He collapsed onto the floor and started slamming his head against the tile, begging for mercy until his forehead was bloody. "Mr. Miller, please, I am Julian. You sponsor my scholarship. You said I had a bright future. Please don't do this. I didn't know. I swear. I just thought he was some nobody. My father looked down at him with pure disgust. I sponsor thousands of students every year, Julian. I guess I missed the part of your application where it said you were a sociopath. Next time I'll make sure to add a background check for basic humanity. Get him out of my sight. Chloe finally seemed to snap out of her trance. She kicked Julian in the ribs and scrambled over to my father, grabbing at his suit jacket. Uncle Miller, please. I'm Lucas's fiancée. We're a family. I was confused. Julian manipulated me. He told me Lucas was trying to kill him. I was just trying to protect the family. Please, Uncle, don't hate me. Watching them turn on each other like rats in a trap was the most satisfying thing I'd ever seen. My father didn't say another word. He just signaled to his men. The guards grabbed them by the arms and dragged them out of the room. Chloe was screaming my name until her voice gave out. Lucas, please, I love you. Lucas. Her screams echoed down the hallway until they were replaced by the quiet hum of the hospital machines. It took me 2 months to get out of that bed. My body was a roadmap of scars, but I was alive. Olivia never left my side. She spent every day in my room, making sure I had everything I needed. She'd spend an hour meticulously slicing fruit for me, making sure every piece was perfect before handing it to me. She read to me for hours, always my favorite and warm mysteries. She'd do all the voices, even the gritty, gravelly voice of the villain, just to make me laugh. She even started bringing in homemade soup every day, learning exactly how I liked it seasoned. She was everything Chloe never was. Compared to the toxic nightmare that was Chloe, Olivia was a dream. I couldn't believe I'd spent so many years ignoring the person who actually loved me. One evening, after I'd finished every last drop of her soup, I leaned back against the pillows and watched her as she quietly packed up her things. Olivia, I said softly, be honest with me. Do you only like me because of who my father is? She stopped what she was doing and looked me right in the eye, her expression completely serious. Lucas Miller, she said firmly. I didn't even know you were Miller until 2 months ago. I've loved you since we were kids. I don't care about your bank account. I knew she meant it. In my last life, she had died defending my memory before she ever found out I was wealthy. She was the only person in the world who had loved the poor version of me. I still didn't know when it had started for her. She was quiet for a long time, looking down at her hands. Lucas, what about you? She asked, her voice small. Does it bother you that I'm the illegitimate sister? I could see the old pain in her eyes, the insecurity she'd lived with her whole life. I reached out and gently squeezed her hand. Olivia, I don't care about your past. All I care about is our future. As long as you're with me, you'll never be second best again. She looked at me, a slow smile spreading across her face. I promise you, Lucas, I am yours, completely and forever. She took my hand in hers. Her skin was warm, and the way she looked at me made my heart race in a way Chloe never had. Over the next few months, everything changed. Olivia and I became inseparable. I found myself falling for her more every day, captivated by her kindness and her quiet strength. As for Chloe, things didn't go quite so well. After my father's talk with her, she was dumped back at the Lynn estate, only to find out that the Miller engagement had been officially transferred to Olivia. Her father was livid. Realizing she'd blown the biggest deal in the family's history, he disowned her on the spot and had her thrown out onto the street. She was still bruised and battered when the Lynn family security literally tossed her out of the gates. She ended up on the curb with nothing but the clothes on her back. She searched every pocket she had and only managed to find a few crumpled bills. It wasn't even enough to pay for a taxi, let alone the medical care she needed. She used to have a fleet of limousines and a circle of friends who hung on her every word. Now, she was just another face in the crowd, and people walked right past her like she didn't exist. Without the Miller name behind her, Chloe was nothing. She was a liability the Lynns were more than happy to get rid of. Meanwhile, Olivia was flourishing. As the future Mrs. Miller, she was now the golden child of the Lynn family. She was officially named the heir to the Lynn Empire. She'd gone from managing a tiny satellite office to being the CEO of the entire Lynn Group in less than a year. And she was brilliant at it. The day I finally left the hospital, Olivia was there to pick me up. She looked incredible in a white designer dress, her face glowing with a happiness I'd never seen before. She was helping me into the passenger seat when a woman suddenly lunged out from behind a dumpster. She grabbed my arm with a grip like iron. The smell of unwashed clothes and desperation was overwhelming. Lucas, it's me. It's Chloe. I looked down, horrified. The woman was a mess. Her hair was matted. Her face was covered in grime, and she looked like she hadn't eaten in weeks. I could just barely see the girl I used to love under all that filth. I recoiled in disgust, trying to pull my arm away. Olivia didn't hesitate. She stepped between us and shoved Chloe back. Get away from him. Chloe stumbled and fell back onto the pavement. She looked up at Olivia, her eyes filled with a terrifying, unhinged rage. Olivia, you little bitch, she shrieked. You stole him from me. You manipulated him. Lucas loves me. He's always loved me. You're just a cheap replacement. I cover my nose, unable to stand the stench. Chloe, look at yourself. You're a mess. And honestly, you always were. You had everything, and you threw it away for a con artist. I stopped loving you the second you stood by and watched Julian beat me. We were over a long time ago. It was Julian. He tricked me, she sobbed, reaching out for me again. I've always loved you, Lucas. Remember the summer in the Hamptons? Remember how happy we were? She was trying to play on my memories, but she didn't realize that the Lucas Miller who would have done anything for her had died a long time ago. He wasn't coming back. I just looked at her with pity. Every memory I have of you just makes me sick now. You're not a part of my life anymore, Chloe. You're just a bad dream I finally woke up from. If I ever see you near me or Olivia again, I'll make sure the police pick you up for harassment. Stay away. I pulled the door shut and signaled for Olivia to drive. Olivia got behind the wheel, and we pulled away, leaving Chloe screaming in the middle of the street. I didn't look back. As we drove, Olivia glanced at me. If you want, I can have someone send her some money, just so she doesn't starve. I shook my head. Don't bother. She made her choice. I don't want to waste another second thinking about her. Olivia just smiled and took my hand. Good, she said softly, because I'm not planning on letting you go. Ever. I looked at her, a question that had been bothering me finally coming to the surface. So, when did it happen? When did you actually start liking me? She just gave me a playful, mysterious smile. I'll tell you on our wedding night. Not a second before. As for Julian Miller, his biological father turned out to be a low-level mob boss who didn't take kindly to his son's failures. He shipped Julian off to a forced labor camp in a remote part of Eastern Europe. Prison would have been too easy for him. From what I heard, Julian was spending his days in a coal mine, barely getting enough to eat. It was a slow, miserable existence, exactly what he deserved. I thought I was done with him forever. But 5 years later, I saw him one last time. I was walking through the city when I saw a man in a tattered orange vest, sweeping trash into a bin under the blistering sun. He was skeletal, his skin like parchment. Every time someone walked by, he'd start screaming at them. Get away from me. Do you know who I am? I'm Lucas Miller. I'm the heir to the Miller fortune. I had my driver pull over for a second. I just watched him. In the 5 years since the hospital, Olivia and I had built an incredible life together. We had a 3-year-old son who was the light of our lives. Olivia was the most incredible partner I could have asked for. My life was perfect. With my family's backing, the Lynn Group had become a global powerhouse. Olivia had proven herself to be a brilliant CEO, respected by everyone in the industry. We were at the park that day, just a normal Saturday. My son was begging for a chocolate cone, so I told Olivia to stay with him while I ran to the stand. As I was walking back, I saw a man lurking near the bench where Olivia and my son were sitting. I recognized that hunch immediately. Julian, I barked, my voice cracking like a whip. He jumped like he'd been electrocuted. He turned around, his eyes wide and bloodshot. I grabbed him by the collar and slammed him back against a tree, away from my family. What are you doing here, Julian? I hissed. I wasn't doing anything. I just wanted to see, he stammered, unable to look me in the eye. Stay away from my family. I warned, my voice low and dangerous. If I ever see you within a mile of them again, you won't survive the night. He went pale, but then he started whispering to himself. It's not fair, he whimpered. Why do you get everything? It was supposed to be me. I was the one who was supposed to be the Miller heir. I just looked at him with pure disgust. 5 years, and you're still living in a fantasy world, I said. I guess that labor camp didn't do much for your mental health. His eyes went vacant, and he started rocking back and forth. No, it's all wrong. You were supposed to die that night. I saw it. I saw you die. I was supposed to marry Chloe. I was supposed to have the money. I saw it happen, Lucas. I saw it. I realized then that he remembered. He remembered the other life, the one where they'd won. In that life, my father had given up, and Chloe and Julian had picked the Miller empire clean. They hadn't even bothered to hide it. Julian had lived as Lucas Miller, spending my father's hard-earned money while the world just watched and did nothing. Even after my father passed away, Julian had kept up the act, living my life while I was in the ground. I felt a surge of cold fury. He knew. He knew he'd stolen my life once, and he couldn't handle the fact that I'd taken it back. Suddenly, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, serrated knife. The blade caught the sun, and my heart skipped a beat. If I can't have it, nobody can, he screamed, his voice cracking with insanity. If you die, it resets. It has to reset. I'm the heir. I'm the one who belongs in that house. It's all mine. I backed away, keeping my eyes on the knife. Julian, it's over. You lost. There is no reset. This is your life now. People like you don't win, Julian. Not in this life, not in the last one. You are always going to end up exactly where you are. Liar, he shrieked, lunging at me. It's all mine. He came at me with a knife, but he never even got close. My security team was on him in an instant, tackling him to the ground before I could even blink. The knife clattered onto the pavement. I'd spent the last 5 years making sure I was never vulnerable again. My team didn't take any chances. I looked down at him, pinned to the ground like the pathetic insect he was. You're a sad, broken man, Julian, and you're going to spend the rest of your life in a psychiatric ward where you can't hurt anyone ever again. Get him out of here, I told my head of security. Make sure the police know exactly what he tried to do. They dragged him away, his screams for his inheritance fading into the distance. Suddenly, I felt a pair of arms wrap around me. I smelled Olivia's perfume, and the tension left my body instantly. She was trembling, her eyes wide with fear. Lucas, oh my God, are you okay? The guard said someone attacked you. Her voice was thick with tears. Seeing how much she cared about me, I felt a wave of pure, overwhelming gratitude. I pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. I'm fine, Olivia. I'm perfect. In this life, I hadn't just survived. I had won. I had my family. I had my life. And most importantly, I finally had the love I'd been searching for all along. Reborn at the moment he was murdered by his treacherous fiancée and her imposter lover, a wealthy heir seizes his second chance by making one crucial change. Instead of calling his betrayer for help, he calls his powerful father. This single act initiates a swift revenge, as he swaps his arranged marriage to his fiancée's kind sister, cutting the villains off from the power and wealth they crave. When the antagonists, still believing him to be a powerless orphan, confront him in the hospital, his father's arrival exposes their scheme and seals their downfall. Years later, happily married and powerful, he effortlessly thwarts a final, deranged attack from the imposter, fully rewriting his tragic past into a triumphant destiny.